This is a significant milestone for the Coast Guard, I think also for the Department of Homeland Security, and marks a new era on how we're managing acquisitions. I'd like to hit maybe two topics and take some questions from you before I have to leave, and I'm sure that Gary and his team here will be glad to carry out any detailed answers that you might need. First of all, this acquisition was started out under our new acquisition organization, and this will be a cradle-to-grave Coast Guard program. It represents the integration of our technical authorities, our sponsors, and the representatives that were operating outside the Deepwater organization when we first started the Deepwater acquisition. It is in complete keeping with the direction I gave the Coast Guard when I became Commandant in May of 2006 to merge the Deepwater programs and our acquisition programs together. Well over a year ago, we stood up the new acquisition directorate, and we have put in a disciplined process to include worldwide market research, consultation with appropriate technical authorities, and third-party independent review. And we've continue to assess these designs, and we've gone through, as you see, a very competitive process, independent of the Deepwater contract, openly competed. The oversight of this project is not going to stop here. We have a new way of doing business in the Coast Guard, and we will continue to do that, and it will include carrying out all of our stewardship responsibilities. We're uniquely aware of the interest in the Deepwater project and the interest in the 123 conversion program. We intend to design, build, test, and evaluate this boat correctly to ensure that the American public are getting what they bargained for. So that would be my first point. My second point, the critical importance of patrol boats. As we are here today, and we know that 8 123 converted cutters are standing over Curtis Bay as we work out legal issues associated with that. We have extraordinary challenges that we're facing in the Straits of Florida with illegal migration in Windward Pass, Mona Pass between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. But moreover, we have fisheries patrols being conducted all around the coastal United States, in Alaska, and even off of Guam. And as we speak this morning, there are 6 110-foot patrol boats deployed to the northern Persian Gulf that are protecting the oil platforms off of Iraq. These are the workhorses of the Coast Guard. Our day-to-day life in the Coast Guard would be significantly altered if we did not have this capability, and we are currently experiencing a patrol boat gap, as has been discussed before. That's led us to taking this acquisition, running it inside the Coast Guard. We are trying to get this capability to the fleet as soon as we can, but do it properly. There's always going to be a risk trade-off associated with that. First article testing demonstrating that the ship design, as designed, performs, and we will make sure that we are watching that closely as we move forward. But it's imperative that we get this program underway, that we do it successfully, and we demonstrate not only to the Congress and the American people, but our own people in the Coast Guard, that we can deliver a quality patrol boat for them. With that, I'd be glad to take a few questions before I turn over to Gary and his folks there.
What's the status of recovering any funds from the 123?
We work very closely with the Department of Justice. We are, in fact, in the process of right now of requesting and going over documentation. As Admiral Blower mentioned earlier, there are 3 levels associated with this particular project. The Prime, which was Integrated Coast Guard Systems, the Tier 1s, which are Northrop Grumman and Lockheed, and then Bollinger. All of those corporations have extensive documentation, technical papers, and so forth. Those are being acquired and being researched as we speak. This will not be a short task. It is extensive. We're talking thousands and thousands of pages, and we're in the process of doing that right now.
You never talk about the price for the ship. How much is the ship?
We'll give you the detailed pricing. And go ahead.
Well, very roughly, and one of the difficulties in giving you just one price is because we have a data rights procurement package, we can buy warranty, and we can buy insurance should we choose to. And of course sparing. Right now I think we're planning on 18 ship sets of spares. So the rough per hull construction production contract is $45 to $50 million. And again, it just depends on how many spares you're going to put in that. When we buy the data procurement rights, they're more expensive if we buy them early in the project. They're less expensive if we buy them late in the project.
How much is this contract award for?
The contract we're giving
$88 million.
$88 million.
This is an $88 million system to what?
Detailed design and construction of the lead ship, as well as an interim contract supply support.
Now, we have a much larger fleet of patrol boats out there than the 24 to 34 will be acquired under this contract, and we will have the option to compete that, again, to make sure we get the best value for the remainder of the fleet.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We are acquiring 24 to 34 vessels under this contract. Our requirement is for 54 for the fleet. 58, I'm sorry, 58. We have the option at the end of this contract term to recompete it, and now keep competition in and provide best value as we build out the entire fleet.
Recompete who builds the ship.
Correct.
The design will say, but.
The design, yeah, there'll be a baseline design.
RFP,
Yes.
So maybe you can ask for something like Marinette or somebody.
We have the option to openly compete it.
Sir, I want to talk about the lessons learned that Admiral Bloor mentioned in the 123s, and this is the first, you said, cradle to grave for acquisition director. Can you expand a little bit more on what that means, the success of this ship needs to point to the acquisition director? And its
Sure. It really has less to do with the 123 project than how we were organized. When we decided to go ahead with the Deepwater project, it was significantly different than anything we had done before in the Coast Guard, and we set up a special office headed by a program executive, an admiral, just to run the Deepwater project. The problem is that required an integration of everything the Coast Guard was going to do in dealing with integrated Coast Guard systems. And as I used to say, if you deal with integrated Coast Guard systems, you need an integrated Coast Guard. We didn't integrate the Coast Guard going into this. We had a single point of entry in integrated Coast Guard systems. Therefore, along the way, and it's been well documented in congressional hearings and elsewhere, we sometimes disenfranchised our technical authorities, didn't have the right people at the table in design reviews, and in some cases, under the time elements in the contract, decisions defaulted to the contractors if we weren't able to resolve conflicts. Everything was skewed on the time of schedule, and if you didn't resolve it, the contractor was allowed to make the decision to move forward. We're in a vastly different environment right now. So whether it's a 123 project or a new solicitation for a new platform, our processes are different, organizational structure is different. We have an integrated Coast Guard. We are the lead systems integrator.
Sir, can you just expand a little bit on the patrol boat gap and what you're doing to mitigate it in the interim?
Sure. And in fact, we can give you some charts and actually put some real detailed numbers to it.
Okay.
We had a gap to begin with going into Deepwater. That's the reason we were doing the project, to try and produce more capability. In the process, we had to lay up the 8 123s because they just weren't performing with the structural problems. To mitigate the loss of those 8 hulls, we took the crews and the funding associated with the operation of those cutters, and we double crewed existing 110s down there. And the good news is we've learned a lot about multiple crewing and more effectively operating our fleet that's probably going to serve us well into the future. The bad news is you got to put more money into those ships to keep them up, and you're expending their service life sooner. So while you're filling the gap, it puts a premium on to have these vessels starting to be delivered in 2010. We've also brought other assets from around the Coast Guard as we've needed them into theater down there, made better use of our maritime patrol aircraft and our surveillance and reconnaissance assets to be more effective with the hours that we had. One more? Yeah, Chris.
I noticed this is a 5-day endurance on these ships. Now the 110s, of course, frequently patrol the Windward Passage and all down the grid. I understand they go out for, not unusual to go out for something longer than that. Is that enough endurance for these ships, or that seems a little tight, I guess?
Well, it depends on the operating profile.
Is it really 5 days?
Well, it depends on the operating profile. If you're loitering in Windward Pass waiting to be queued to a contact and you're not using fuel, then it's a matter of how many stores you can carry on board, which becomes a long pole in the tent. So my guess is we will use these longer than 5, but you need a planning parameter. And if you're operating at high tempo operations, you want to get them in and refuel them and give them a break every 5 days. But in lower tempo operations or loitering, it would be longer than that.
And as I recall, the 110 requirement is 5 days. That was the threshold requirement. And it's the same here. It's the threshold requirement. It doesn't mean we won't be able to well exceed that. You're right. We're going to be using them out there for longer than 5 days.
When you had your press conference in this room last year to announce that you were taking back this FRC program, and I gather the FRCB, this is just the FRC.
It is the well, this was what we would have been calling the FRCB. It has a name now. It's the Sentinel Class.
One of your selling points at that press conference was this was on a fast track. We know how to do this. We want to pick something that's out there. And the impression at that time was you were going to make a decision, even make it in the last year, like earlier this year. This has been put off a number of times. I guess part of the question is why was this so hard once you got into it? Why was it? I know you were anxious to make a decision.
If you want a bumper sticker, it's getting it right.
But what involves getting it right?
Making sure we absolutely understood the designs that were being offered. To the extent that we didn't understand the technical issues associated with the designs, to go back and clarify that. To be able to have conversations with the bidders that were in the competitive range and make sure they understood what our requirements were, to treat everybody equally, to make sure everybody had a chance to respond. We wanted to make sure that when we were done, we made absolutely the best decision possible. And if there are any technical questions at all that we should have referred back or clarified with the offerers, that we did that. And that took a little bit more time to get that done.
Did you have a final list of 2 or 3 competitors, and one of those you
I will defer to the contracting officer what can be released, because some of this is proprietary information on what the officers offered us, and that may not be releasable. Claire?
The information that's released publicly is the number of offers who actually submitted proposals, not necessarily the number of offers that are in the competitive range to preserve the integrity of the procurement process. So that information will be provided to each of the unsuccessful offers in terms of how many people proposed, and that information's already been made available in terms of how many proposals were received. So we did achieve robust competition. We did go through discussions in the competitive range with the most highly competitive offers, and we selected this proposal as the best value for the Coast Guard.
So what was your final selection? Did you have a top 3? Who were they?
In accordance with federal acquisition regulations, that information doesn't get released. We don't release the names of the offers. The companies are absolutely free to say whether they competed and who competed, but the government does not release the names of the offers who competed for the requirements.
Let me repeat, that's not Coast Guard policy. That's federal regulations. One more?
Just a quick question, Commandant. How does the crewing requirements of the new Sentinel Class compare against the Island Class that will eventually replace?
We have 2 different crewing envelopes for the Island Class. One of the domestic, one of the augmented crews that are operating in the Persian Gulf. And Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 16 and 22? 16 domestically, 22 in the Persian Gulf. So it's on a par with the staffing that we're using for the existing 110s in the Persian Gulf.
And the Sentinel is 22, 2 officers,
Right.
21.
Right. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Gary. They'll answer any detailed technical questions you got. Thank you very much for participating this morning.
Thanks, sir.